Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show on Thursday, April 17th. We are only a week away from the 2025 NFL Draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I'm sure the weather will be absolutely wonderful, and where I'm sure summer has to start before July 17th in Green Bay. There's no way it's cold in Green Bay until at least July 17th. We'll have amazing weather next weekend in Wisconsin. But we're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about the man who wants to be talked about, always, Aaron Rodgers. Might talk about Jaxson Dart, who's trying to become the little first rounder who could. Treveyon Henderson getting steam as the RB3, maybe even the RB2 in this draft class, recently visiting the Broncos and Steelers, two running back needy teams. Then we're going to get into recent articles from Mr. Kyle and Mr. Denny. Denny of 3 late round wide receiver prospects he likes, which dovetails nicely with Kyle's ongoing dynasty ranking series. He has 2 parts up on both running back and wide receiver right now. Ranks also up in quarterback and tight end. Really, really good stuff. But now we begin every show with a riff, and now we're going to riff on that topic we established for the show. So just go on and do it, guys.
Yeah. NBA is expanding.
The mail. What, the NBA is expanding?
Yeah, they're expanding.
What?
To what?
They're expanding. They're adding teams, guys.
Did you fall for fake news?
I did not.
Can we get a good one in Charlotte? I know we have a bad one, but
NBA
can we do like a second one that works?
Told an ESPN personality today that it was likely. So we're going to have an even more watered down NBA, which should be great.
Oh my gosh. They've been kind of saying this for years, by the way. The NHL has kind of been saying this for years. MLB has been kind of saying this for years. And, look at what it gets you. It gets you the Utah Hockey Club.
Right.
They not an expansion team, by the way.
Also not even an expansion team, like a near defunct team.
Okay, so in the NFL, we can all agree that if the NFL eliminated 4 teams, it'd be better, right?
Yeah, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe
sure.
6. Maybe 6.
For sure. Yeah.
8. I think you could push to 8.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Again,
so we need to be
Charlotte.
doing this.
We can get rid of the Charlotte team. I'm so sorry to my hometown, but just get rid of it.
Eliminate all the teams in the Southeast. No one cares down there. They only care about football.
Yeah, I do think that you just have to wipe out the Southeast.
By the football, of course, I mean college football.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things that makes me sad about American sports at this point is this country is so big. Like in all 4 leagues, we genuinely have too few teams, I believe. But I do not like how hard it has become to win a title in every league. With your mathematical odds in the NFL, 1 out of every 32 years, you're going to win a title. Like it's so infrequent. I mean, if the NFL went on 500 years, you'd get like a 200-year title drought from a team at some point. I wish we could somehow establish like more small victories where it wasn't like only getting the championship. Like, in college basketball, like making the Final Four is almost a championship equivalent. Making the playoff in college football was kind of similar.
Yeah,
but
they killed that, man.
I feel like
bowl games used to be awesome. Like bowl games used to be so cool. Just making a bowl game for a lot of programs was like special. It truly did feel like a national title if you went to a small little podunk school, unlike me, where bowl games meant nothing. We only cared about titles. But no, growing up, I also grew up a Virginia Tech fan. Like making a bowl game as Virginia Tech, like a good one, the Orange Bowl or something, really meant something. And they've taken it away from college football. Like you said, you only have one goal in the NFL. It's to win a Super Bowl. A lot of teams will like live our entire lives without that. There is like a lack of meaning. But then the NBA tries it with the play-in tournament. Everyone's like, well, that sucks. We don't want that.
Well, that does suck because that's different. Because that's too is that like the back end, like, oh wow, congratulations, the 10th seed is now the 7th seed. Like, don't overdo it on the accomplishments there. Like sometimes I think like a Major League Baseball needs to expand to 40 teams, go back to 2 20-team leagues, establish 2 20-team leagues that do not play each other.
Yeah.
Basically create like more like independent trophies, like more it's too big. Like it's too easy to get lost now. And I know it just kind of makes me sad.
I don't the constant interleague play is almost offensive.
It's all I texted someone the other day. I remember when the Cardinals used to play National League teams. It was the oldest old person text I've ever seen in my life.
Why? Yeah, we need to go back. We got to bring it back to never playing.
Should also do more obscure rules that only exist in one league. Like obviously for a while the DH only existed in one half. Do like, okay, well, this team actually only has an 8-man batting order. And this team, lefties get to go twice. They get 4 strikes and they're out. Just do more dumb esoteric rules between the two.
My dad, who was born in 1954, acted like there was a death in the family in 1996 or 1997 when they introduced interleague play. It was just, it's not right.
Well, it kind of like threw you for a loop. Like if you watch baseball, it's like no. The only time these teams are supposed to play is in the World Series. That's what makes it.
But then I think they did it because they got back to those 30 teams. You could go 200 years without the New York Yankees and St. Louis Cardinals ever playing. So the whole it's more to like address the sadness, I feel like, of our sports have become too big, but they're actually too small because our country is so big. And there's no perfect answer. Everything is meaningless. And,
not to drag this out, but that same thing happens in college football where like I turn on a Saturday and see Ohio State playing Oregon as a conference game. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, please, can we not do this?
College football has been well and truly like real deal ruined, like real deal ruined.
Which is why we're talking about it for like almost this entire show.
Speaking of ruining things, Aaron Rodgers continues to try to ruin the offseason, continues to eventually maybe at some point ruin the Steelers franchise, but he cannot make up his mind. A CBS Sports reporting, quote, he's not going to play just for the sake of playing, which, give me a break. I mean, this guy wants to play like worse than anyone has ever played, but the Steelers like, we'll give you $12 million. And like that. And then he's like, well, what if I negotiate? And they just like hang up the phone. Like it's 12 million. I'm just making up this number, but it seems desperate for attention from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Denny Carter. I mean, is there anything even left to say at this point? He claims it's because of personal issues, off the field issues, which, you know, even with Aaron Rodgers, we do have to like give some deference to that because there's no reason to. We don't know if he's probably telling the truth. But man, is this saga ever? Do you actually think he's not going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Let's go there.
I actually think there is maybe a 50-50 chance that he ends up with the Steelers. There was another report this week that said that he is trying to sign with a contender. I mean, I think that's what you referenced at the beginning of this segment is saying that he's not going to play just to play. Well, are the Steelers a contender? Probably not.
Well, it's too though. It also says, I think it says more about him. Like the Steelers roster, typically one you would look at and be like, well, they could get an actual quarterback, they'd be a contender. And Aaron Rodgers is basically saying, I'm not good enough.
Right. Well, and this actually makes sense in the context of Rodgers and Kevin O'Connell talking about him going to Minnesota, which, by the way, in his interview today on ESPN, Rodgers dismissed that. He said we were just two old friends talking. It wasn't about anything else. And so I think he's trying to save face there. But that would be the not just playing just to play situation. It would be like, I'm actually joining a really good Vikings team with a good defense and a good offense, and we can actually win the Super Bowl maybe. With the Steelers, that's just not happening. So I guess there's a pretty good chance of him not playing this year.
The Steelers, it could like if Lamar Jackson were plopped down to the Pittsburgh Steelers, like everyone would say, "Oh yeah, Super Bowl contender."
Yeah, sure.
Like, so like it's basically Rodgers admitting he's not good anymore. And
I mean, it's good to have self-awareness. I don't know.
I guess I don't know. I don't know. I don't know like how I want this to. I wanted them on the Steelers because I love chaos, but the Steelers should honestly probably view it, Kyle, as like maybe this is like a second chance at life. Like not signing Aaron Rodgers and just maybe draft a quarterback. Do you think he's going to play for the Steelers, or do you think he's going to play for the Steelers elsewhere, or just not be in the NFL in 2025?
I don't think he's going to play. For the longest time, when we talked about this a few weeks ago, like, should we just pencil in Aaron Rodgers as the Steelers quarterback? And I said, yes. I think I unequivocally was like, yeah, it just seems that's all signs are pointing to that. But I think a big hangup is going to be if the Steelers go out and draft a quarterback. And now the Steelers are in an awkward position where if they don't draft a quarterback, they really are depending on Aaron Rodgers. They're in a bad spot where he has to be the savior because otherwise it's not going to go that great with Rodgers anyways, but this is what you're telling yourself, right? That you need Aaron Rodgers if you don't draft a rookie. But if you do draft a rookie, Rodgers probably doesn't want to be in that situation again. And I do think they ultimately will draft. Maybe they draft a day 2 rookie and that guy's not enough to dissuade Aaron Rodgers from playing. But I guess like if I had to bet now, I kind of just don't think he plays.
Rodgers, man, like I'm not trying to be a hater because we've been kind of taking turns being Rodgers haters, but you can't believe anything this guy says because remember the early offseason, Aaron Rodgers wants to play 2 more years, and now it's like, I'm not going to play just to play. Like he's gone from I'm playing 2 more years to I'm not going to play just to play, and it's honestly almost like painfully poignant, like you're leaking like, well, his interest outside of football doesn't really seem like that to me. Like, it seems like he's desperately trying to find interests outside of football, doing anything he can in his like search for non-football meaning, and has been struggling to find it.
Yeah,
he would be better off embracing that he is a football guy and like playing till the wheels fall off, which I guess he's maybe already done. But the whole thing is just like very twisted and sad in a very American kind of way.
It is. I mean, look, Aaron, if you're looking for a hobby, I suggest fantasy football.
I do suggest
get into it, brother.
Right, get into it and do not draft Jaxson Dart, who will be a mega giga hella bust. But NFL teams don't seem to agree with me on that. Fox says Jordan Schultz has reported he will not fall out of the first round. He's been heavily connected to the Los Angeles Rams. I think maybe loosely connected to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are you guys getting aboard the Jaxson Dart first round train? He seems like he has kind of, Kyle, has he solidified himself as the QB3, or is it still a competition from Jalen Milroe there? Where are you at with Jaxson Dart, Mr. Draft Guy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he is for sure the QB3. Like, I'd put it at 75%. Though. I do think he's a pretty good favorite to be the QB3, but I'm sure there are teams out there. I would bet there is at least one team that has Tyler Shuck as their QB3 or even 2. And at least, I know. I feel the same. I listen to the Tuesday podcast. Go back and listen to that if you want to hear Shuck talk. I feel the same way as you guys.
Should not have an NFL team if you draft Tyler Shuck. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
No, truly.
What are you doing?
There are some guys out there.
King. Yep. Anyways, sorry.
There are some owners, GMs, brain trust draftniks out there who do see him as that guy. And there are some people who want to take the gamble on the Jalen Milroe elite traits. And I don't blame them. We had Andrew Berry saying that he thinks that like Milroe is maybe the best runner outside of Lamar Jackson in the NFL already, or maybe the fastest when he said something like that. He said he had rare physical traits, which he absolutely does. With all that being said, Dart checks more of the boxes that we expect from a prototypical NFL quarterback and is still a really good runner. Got over 600 yards last year. We had Milroe pushing for just shy of 900. So he's not that he's the same runner at all, but he is a good runner. I think he's probably the second best runner of the class in terms of what he can bring, both from fantasy and a real life perspective. Where do I think he goes? The Saints have done their due diligence with a lot of quarterbacks. The Giants have as well. The Saints that seemingly haven't done a ton of work, at least don't seem that interested in Shedeur Sanders, and they are sort of the prime landing spot for QB2 or maybe even QB3, depending on how things fall. I could see him being a Steeler, right? I do think the timeline would work out quite well for the Rams.
Is he a better prospect than Kenny Pickett was? Off the top of your
head? I'd say yes, but it is so much in the eye of the beholder because he played in Lane Kiffin's total Mickey Mouse offense.
Not a real
offense. He killed it. It is so not a real offense, but he was really successful, more successful than some of the previous Lane Kiffin projects we've had. He is a really good athlete. Doesn't have elite size, but he's thick at 6'2", 220s, I believe, if I remember correctly. So he has good enough size, really good legs. He is really accurate. He just didn't play in an NFL style offense, and that showed sometimes. Like when he had to work through his read progressions, it was often not nearly as good. Not good. He was still actually pretty good when he was working off of his first read. On his first read, he was the best quarterback in the country per all the metrics. Off of his first read, he was in the 20s. It's not bad, but it's also not what you want to see from a guy who, like, I think the Saints should just take the plunge at 9 and do it. It's maybe not what you want to see from that type of guy. I do think he's a first round pick. I do think he is most likely to be the QB3, but I think these red flags are legitimate, and there's a chance he's not the QB3.
First of all, let's not pretend the NFL is still like a 3 or 4 read league. Like the NFL is like a 1 or 2 read league. Even
a lot of teams are going to be like, oh, he can't work through the progression. Like our OC has that covered.
Yep. Like don't care. We don't even have a third read in the playbook anymore. Mr. Denny Carter, Jaxson Dart, only 21 on draft night. He just turned 22 in May, so about to turn 22 years old. So he has the right age. Denny, do you have any thoughts on Jaxson Dart? We've been dipping into the Jaxson Dart talk here over the past few weeks.
All right. So the good thing here are the good things. Breakout age of 19. That's pretty good. Really good athleticism. Pro Football Focus graded Jaxson Dart last year as the best passer in the nation, above Cam Ward. He had a pretty low pressure to sack ratio, which is always good for keeping drives going and being a legit NFL quarterback. So that's all good. But then there are the meltdowns that you mentioned just now, and also on Tuesday's show with Eric Froton. There's also the fact that his hands are small, like Kenny Pickett.
Oh gosh.
Okay, he has 40th percentile hands. I mean, don't get me wrong, Pickett's are smaller hands. But
I was going to say Pickett's were like 4th percentile. Just knock that 0 off to get to Kenny Pickett.
That's right. It's maybe it's unfair to describe it that way, but I think Dart is like a desperation kind of pick, but for fantasy, I think he kind of could be cool because
I think he is a desperation pick too. That unlike Kenny Pickett, he at least has upside. Like I understand the upside case for Jaxson Dart. And by the way, many are insisting to me I should quote watch more than 5 minutes of one Jaxson Dart college game.
Well, you watch the good games, and you'll think he's good.
So they're telling me I should watch more than the end of that Florida game. I saw a lot of Jaxson Dart. He was mostly fine in college. I totally agree with the desperation pick tag. But yeah, my take would be desperation, but it might actually pan out. And quarterback is a position where you should be desperate. As we've seen, you're not really going anywhere if you don't have a quarterback. It'd be really tough for the one team to take both Kenny Pickett and Jaxson Dart in a 5-year span. That would be pretty unbelievable level of desperation. But I wrote in my Mike Tomlin coach rankings, it is kind of like, what are the Steelers supposed to do when they're never bad enough to miss the playoffs? They're never good enough to do anything in the playoffs. And then they're always picking in the 20s. So they can't solve their big problem of no quarterback. They are kind of in a position where they have to seek desperate remedies.
But I mean, you are looking straight down the barrel of 17 Mason Rudolph starts if you don't take a quarterback in the first round of the draft here.
Or, man, I really hate to even say this one out loud, or trading for Derek Carr.
Eesh.
I mean,
God.
Carr's not playing in 2025.
Well, I don't know. Now the school of thought seems to be that he is going to play, and that this is basically him trying to tantrum his way off the Saints. It's according to New Orleans Football's Nick Underhill, who has his finger on the pulse of all things Saints. I feel like it's not even financially possible, though, to trade him.
Well, that's what I was going to make that exact point, is all of his like future dead cap will accelerate to this year. It was hard for them to trade a guy like Marshawn Lattimore away, a corner in the middle of his contract, because they would take on a dead cap hit that they barely had room for. Can they afford that with Carr? I very much agree with what you said on Carr on Tuesday, whenever that news broke. And then the show after that is like, this is a blessing in disguise. Like, just rip the Band-Aid off, sit Carr, who maybe is healthy, maybe isn't healthy for a year, and reset. Like, the Saints have never been willing to reset on their own, but maybe this time the universe is going to force them to reset.
I think, I should agree with my own self from Tuesday and say the most likely outcome probably is Derek Carr being a Saint, but just not there in 2025, and maybe both sides kind of getting ready for 2026. Jaxson Dart was the one you said local New Orleans TV was begging the Saints to draft.
I like that.
Right?
Big bit, yes. The TV.
I like Dart. I think he has upside. Like, his numbers were elite. He was a really good deep ball thrower.
Not a real system again.
Not a real system. I agree. Not a real system. Tons of play action. Got to throw to his first read a lot, and it was getting guys wide open on his first reads. But like, that's what good quarterbacks do. They take advantage of the good situations. And he was really accurate on deep stuff. Again, like, it's easy to be accurate when your guy is open deep. Like, Tua always looks accurate on deep stuff because Tyreek Hill's wide open. That being said, I think there's more upside than the Kenny Pickett. I do think ultimately, like, if a guy's projected to go in the 20s, it is doomed. It is most likely to not work out.
That's true. Like, quarterback, man, you need to be going top 10 or in the early second round.
Like, we're hoping they hit like a double, like with Bo Nix, and Bo Nix went 12th or something. 12th or 16th.
And Mahomes went 12th. 12 is about like the low end for. I think Mahomes went 10th, actually, not 12th. So quarterback, you need to be going in the true lottery or number 32, the trade up range, or early second round. Going in the 20s, the Pickett zone means you're just not good.
But to your point, Pat, like, the Steelers cannot get to 12. Mike Tomlin on his life will never let them be as bad as the 12th overall pick. So they got to try. They have to try.
Absolutely love Denny's television New Orleans anecdote, by the way, with Jaxson Dart.
Listen, if you let a meteorologist from a local New Orleans TV station run this draft for the Saints, Jaxson Dart is the Saint.
Jaxson Dart to New Orleans. You heard it here first, that being local New Orleans television surrounding Super Bowl licks. Both the Steelers and Broncos have recently hosted Ohio State running back, the only real school, according to Kyle, Treveyon Henderson, for top 30 visits. Is there first round momentum here, Kyle? He's number 4 in your dynasty running back ranks. Does that maybe need to be adjusted since the league seems pretty high on him? We know real life draft capital plays an absolutely massive part in dynasty league long-term success. Do you think Treveyon Henderson could be a first round pick, Kyle Dvorchak?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I think he's like looking like the betting market's right on the borderline of being a 50-50 shot to be a first round pick. I don't know if that ends up being his fate because he kind of gets the Jahmyr Gibbs comp, right? He maybe never will achieve a 20 touch per game type of season, but he's so dynamic on a per touch basis. That is generally true, but Gibbs was an otherworldly receiver, truly like historic in the history of college football. One of the best yards per route run for a running back in a single season ever. Henderson's a good pass catcher. He's really good with the ball in his hands, but I don't think he nearly has that level of dynamism. That's like Christian McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs and frankly, Jinty all had that level of dynamism. I don't know if he's quite that level. And when you then take away that level of dynamism, he ran like a 4.43 and people thought he would get into the 4.3s. Didn't end up happening. And you just
it's never been more over.
4.43 is still very fast. He's over 200 pounds, but people were saying he could run like mid 4.3s, and that didn't quite happen. So I think he is a very dynamic player, but not the most dynamic player. I don't think he'll be the level that Jahmyr Gibbs is. But then you're also saying you really don't think he'll get to the level of like touch volume of an elite running back either. I think that makes it tricky to see him go into the first round. I would bet against him going in the first round right now, but I think he'll be an early day 2 guy. And without knowing for sure that he's a first round pick or where he goes early in the second, I only have one other non-first round running back, his teammate in college, Quinshon Judkins, ahead of him. Like Marion Hampton appears to be a lock for the first round. Obviously, Jinty's a lock for basically the top 10. Take those 2 guys in Dynasty ahead of him. And then it's choose your flavor of really mostly just the Ohio State running backs at 3 and 4. And it's very possible that after the draft, I flip them the other way around.
Only school that matters, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Denny, do you have any new thoughts on Treveyon Henderson since Tuesday with Eric?
I mean, he lands in Denver and he becomes like instantly like a top 10 fantasy back.
He's everyone calls him Alvin Kamara the moment he gets drafted by Denver.
Oh, man, please just make
it. I'm actually being conservative.
Only draft outcome I care about officially.
Because I mean, like you're talking about no competition, and Sean Payton has talked almost endlessly for 2 months now about we need a running back. We need a running back. Our running backs stink. And, and so Henderson would make a lot of sense. I mean, I would like to see Hampton go to Denver myself, but, whoever lands there is going to have all the opportunity in the world.
More draft talk when we come right back after this. NFL Draft Week kicks off Sunday, April 20th with a 24-hour marathon of news, mock drafts, rankings, player interviews, and more on the NBC Sports Now channel. Tune in all week beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern for PFT Live, The Dan Patrick Show, Chris Sims Unbuttoned, and Fantasy Football Happy Hour for the latest news, insights, and rumors surrounding the draft. For more details, visit NBCSports.com/now. Draft marathon might as well be starting right now, actually, because we're going to continue to talk about it. And Kyle, again, your aforementioned dynasty rankings. Denny, by the way, I'm only talking to Kyle today, by the way.
That's okay. I'm a good listener.
We're getting to some of Denny's late round prospects in just a little bit. The wide receiver, Denny's going to weigh in on these guys too. Of course, Kyle, how did you settle on the Buckeyes' Emeka Egbuka as their wide receiver 3 in Dynasty? Am I saying his name right? I've been watching his games for several years, and I still don't know.
Egbuka. You have the first name right instead of A at the end.
Emeka Egbuka, how did you settle him as your wide receiver 3 ahead of Mr. Luther Burden, a very polarizing prospect, including to myself, who watched him play every single game in college?
Yeah, I mean, this is the dumbest one. Egbuka's good. That's the thing. It's like he's really good, has a really high floor, and I think we're not the best at figuring out who has high ceilings. Like when you look at someone like Justin Jefferson coming out of college, well, he played second fiddle to Jamar Chase. He didn't have his best season by like his dominator stuff until Chase. Like I think he just took a year off of football. Frankly, I think he just sat out.
He did.
Was it 2020? Right. That was
the COVID year. He didn't play the COVID year. Yeah,
that's correct. Okay, I was gonna say like no one sits out, but people sat out the COVID year, and we were like, oh well, Justin Jefferson, good number 2 in the NFL, but just probably not a lot of ceiling there, right? I think we're really bad at determining what ceiling looks like. I think we're a little better.
Look up what I said about Justin Jefferson as a prospect.
No.
Don't look it up.
Definitely do not look up me taking Jalen Reagor over him in Dynasty like 5 times.
Ooh, you know what? I might have done that too.
Oh, I'm buddy.
I think I did.
Man, the spreadsheets have never been down worse. Oh,
it hurts. And Egbuka doesn't fit like the typical analytics profile, right? He's a 4-year player. I think he's going to go in the first round at least. He's a 4-year player who didn't record the true breakout of 30% dominator, which is a pretty good threshold for being the number 1 receiver by a good margin in your offense, or at least a co-wide receiver 1 in your offense. But he played with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Smith, who will probably go on to be a top 5 pick at receiver in 2 years. He was a true freshman who's just that good. I don't love just like making alibis for players who I think are good. When you play with likely 2 top 5 overall picks at wide receiver, I don't think it's making an alibi as much as just explaining what happened. Gets 2,000-yard seasons, gets really strong yards per route run in both of his most productive seasons. The knocks on him are the ceiling stuff. He's only a slot receiver, but he's bigger than your like small, undersized type of slot that needs to be schemed up work. He was successful in his limited reps on the outside. Like, I think he can win against man and zone. To me, I'm willing to say he has a high floor of a guy who earns a lot of targets, and guys who earn a lot of targets also have high ceilings. Like, if his ceiling is Amon-Ra St. Brown instead of Jamar Chase, maybe that's accurate, and it should mean nothing. That discrepancy is like, oh, once you get to the 99th percentile, maybe you don't hit a Jamar Chase outcome. No one does. Like, take the guy who could just be Amon-Ra St. Brown and be happy with it.
Denny, do you have an Emeka Egbuka take, or you still?
I mean, top 18 yards per route run last year. The slot stuff is, I think, hopeful. And if he has that role in the pros, I think he could, be somewhat viable for fantasy purposes. I'm actually looking up the stat right now. Yeah, I mean, from the slot, he was really effective last year. So I think it would have to be a certain landing spot. I don't think he has a ton of upside, like Kyle was saying.
Is he basically considered a first round lock, or is that
not a lock? I actually look. I may have dabbled in a little bit of the betting on the NFL draft. He was, I think, minus 180 a day ago, and I think it's moved slightly in his favor to go in the first round. Tons of juice in these lines, so it's a one-way market. It's not can't bet both sides of it, but he looks like a pretty good bet to go in the first round. And frankly, I think he is a better bet than the market's having that right now. I think we see one landing spot that seems maybe not the floor, but a very high peak of where his outcomes are is the Houston Texans, who desperately need a second wide receiver. Like, I am not penciling in Christian Kirk as a long-term wide receiver for this team. He's probably best fit this year as the wide receiver 3. Nico Collins, obviously the 1. And we know CJ Stroud, 1, has the connection having thrown to Egbuka 2 or 3 years ago now? 2 years ago, right? So, or three seasons ago. He's been in the NFL for 2 years, one bad year. And we know that when they drafted Stroud, he was the one who got Tank Dell on that team. He was the one saying that was the one receiver he wanted them to take on day 2 after they drafted him. He probably told them that well before the actual night of the draft. We know he has say, and now they have a need at a high value position that he will probably be saying again that he wants this guy. I don't really see how a player with such a high floor, with so many teams needing wide receiver in the middle 20s, even into the early mid-teens, I don't see how he falls not only out of the first round, but I'm not even sure he makes it to the late 20s.
I will say the lack of production in yards after the catch is a little bit concerning. Only 6.7 yards after the catch per reception last year. That was like 24th out of 60 qualifying receivers. I don't know. For a first rounder, you'd like to see someone who can, do it on their own a little more than that. But I guess Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of didn't check that box either. So I may be complaining for nothing.
Kyle referencing Emeka Egbuka's first round betting market to break some news to the members of the show, because no one knows this except for me. We're having Drew Dinsick on Tuesday to talk about some of the stuff.
Right.
Yeah, Danny, I meant to text you and Adam, but I haven't done that yet. He's coming.
That's okay. Now is as good a time as any.
He's coming. You better be ready. No, yeah, we're going to talk about this kind of stuff with Drew on Tuesday. Real quick, we talked about this one too much already. Kyle, what is your take on Luther Burden? Wide receiver 4, solid enough, but it's not wide receiver 3. How did you settle on wide receiver 4 for Luther Burden?
I'm ready to get hurt. Like, I fall for this guy every time. It's just elite dominance from a young age, elite efficiency from a young age. And last year, he's banged up. The offense changes a little bit.
Banged up, doesn't really try. Makes shockingly difficult to get the ball to him for some reason, even though he's supposedly a blue chip prospect. Yeah.
All of those things. Another wide receiver, Theo Wees, takes some targets off the table, but he still has a season in terms of his market share numbers. He didn't play the entire season, but a season in terms of the market share numbers that looks
he limps
good.
off the field after every catch. But
hey, the fact that he can miss half a game 4 times a year and still have decent market share numbers, that's a feather in his cap, if you ask me. That's the Jaden Reed special. That guy takes shots to the ribs. You look back and you're like, hey, he had 6 catches. Not too bad. Not too bad for a guy who left in the third quarter. But guys who are extremely productive at an extremely young age, they play in the power now 4, used to be power 5, and we'll see if he goes in the first round. But they go and say the top 40. Like, those are the high level 10,000 foot view, big box you want to check. Are you good enough that you can leave college football after 3 years? Are you good enough that you can dominate your offense? and you go early in the draft. I don't know if he'll go in the first round. That's a good box check, obviously. Checks all the high-level boxes. The fact that he was used a ton in the slot, like a ton of his production came in the slot, doesn't worry me that much. Like, it's something that is, at least last year, did not hold JSN back. And there's really not a ton of examples of guys who play a ton out of the slot, and that ends up being a big issue for him in the NFL. I think the more concerning thing is that a ton of his production came on screens. And that actually does, once you get to the upper levels of this guy's production was so schemed up, that does actually become a concern. That's like the Wan'Dale Robinson, Rondale Moore, Malachi Corley kinds of concerns. He hasn't quite reached the level that some of those guys reach, but it is reaching red flag territory. I think it's a legitimate red flag. So I don't care that he's a slot, probably mostly a slot only receiver. I do care a little bit that it was a little gimmicky when he was at his best.
With Luther, the main concern for me was it was so difficult for some reason to get the ball in his hands. But the reason I won't call him a guaranteed bust is that once he did get the ball in his hands, it was absolutely electric. And it could have been problems with the Mizzou offense. We got a lot going on here in the state of Missouri. We have a lot going on the show. We're going to take another short break, and we'll be right back after this. Saturday, the Premier League run-in is live on NBC and streaming on Peacock. It's a crucial match for European qualification when Ollie Watkins and Aston Villa host Newcastle. First kick is set for 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're about to move on to Mr. Denny's underrated wide receivers. He's got two really sick plays he wants to talk about. But Kyle couldn't help but notice wide receiver 7 for Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. He's been like a big name in the pre-draft process, which is like why I'm familiar with him. I, of course, also saw a lot of Texas Longhorns football last year. But for as much as he's talked about, I would think wide receiver 7 would be very low for Matthew Golden. So why does the name not match the rank? Why wide receiver 7 for Matthew Golden?
Yeah, I'm being stubborn. I'm going to have to move him up when he ultimately goes in the first round. He does look like pretty much a lock to go in the first round, potentially even as early as like Dallas being a counterbalance to CD Lamb on the outside. Elite, like 4.29 speed. He's not super big. I think he's like 5'10", 180 something pounds. But even at a modest size, 4.29 speed is absolutely insane. But he's not a strong target earner. He never had a true breakout season. Didn't even really threaten for a true breakout season. That 30% dominator threshold was never particularly efficient in college. The list of guys who are neither efficient nor dominant in college and go in the first round, there are some hits, right? Like they're actually the list pulled up. The biggest hits I see on my list with no true breakout season in the first round are JSN last year. Somehow had like an elite college season that wasn't a breakout because Ohio State threw for 5,000 yards. Jalen Waddle, really good, but the highs have been high and the lows have been low in the NFL. Like Mike Williams. These are good players, but I don't know if I see like a ton of ceiling in this cohort. And you get a similar / slightly worse list for guys who never hit 2.5 yards per route run in their best season in terms of overall production. The list contains Calvin Ridley, which is good, Zay Flowers, which is good. And after that, it's not a good list to be on, frankly. It's Laquan Treadwell, Phillip Dorsett, Henry Ruggs, who I guess didn't hit for other reasons, Rashad Perriman. Being neither efficient nor elite production in terms of just overall dominance of your offense, even if you go in the first round, it really doesn't guarantee you a lot. And it doesn't seem like the ceiling players come from this cohort. With all that being said, he will end up being a early declare. He only went to 2 different schools, but only went in college for 3 years.
It is only these days. Right now, it's like the opposite of red flag. Listen, he only played for 2 schools.
Yeah. I was going to say he only went to Texas for 3 years, but technically it's not true. He only went to Texas for 1 year. He went to Alabama, if I remember. No, it's Isaiah Bond. Anyway, he was only a 3-year player. Oh, Houston. That's right. Only went in college for 3 years. And being an early declare is good. When you have the NFL buying into you being ready to join at 21, 22 years old, that is a legitimate green flag going in his favor. But the production just isn't there. And until we find out he goes in the first round, which he is going to go, I'm going to choose to be stubborn and rank him behind guys who have much better production profiles. And ultimately, after the draft, when we have draft capital locked in, I'll capitulate. He's going to move up.
Matthew Golden only went to 2 schools. He, of course, did play in 3 different conferences, though. The American Athletic and the Big 12 with Houston. For then, of course, former Big 12 team, Texas, which was in the SEC for some reason. So still quite the college football journey for Matthew Golden. Speaking of quite the college football journeys, Denny likes to talk about, the little man, like the everyman, the somebody, sure, these guys Kyle are talking about will actually produce and be good and have real life draft capital. But Denny wants to talk about the guys who won't have any of that. And no, every single year from down the board, some of these guys break out. Denny, famously in our little circle, was all over Puka Nacua in 2023. He doesn't claim that he was the only one.
No.
Denny was a very early Puka backer in that pre-draft process. Really like to get his takes on this kind of thing because Denny he finds stuff in the spreadsheets where
that's what it's about.
Can be more truthful than the eye test with some of these down the board guys. Denny, who's an underrated wide receiver you want to talk about?
Right. So this exercise I do every year is I just look at the spreadsheets and then
I sort by yards per route run, and I come back to this practice.
and I sort by that and a couple other things, and bang, 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 got my guys. Let's go. This is how Puka Nacua just kept popping up that 1 year, 3 years ago, whatever. So what if I told you guys that the fourth guy in college football history to win the receiving triple crown is probably not going to be drafted. And if he is, it'll be day 3 pick.
I would say, must not go to a real school and
Folks,
must be 26 years
ding,
old.
Ding, ding. There's one winner. Well, Pat, there's no way it took him 6 years to get there. There's no way it took him 6 years.
No
he
way.
wasn't a 25-year-old playing against freshman corners in the Mountain West.
I was going to suggest you don't look up Nick Nash's age. That would be the first step here. That's part of the process for me. Don't look at the age. So 25 years old.
It's nothing but a number.
Former quarterback. Right. Exactly. They're all on the same level. Former quarterback, converted to receiver, broke out in a huge way last year for San Jose State. I wrote about all the numbers if you'd like to check them out on Rotoworld. But among them, targeted on 35+% of his routes, 11th among all college wideouts in yards per route run. And his average up the target was 13.3. It's not like he was just like a check down king. It's not like, he was just gobbling up 5-yard check downs the entire season. So these were real things that he against decent enough. Now, San Jose State, obviously not playing Michigan, not playing, other good teams that I can't think of right now. Ohio State, perhaps. But they did play some good teams. He did well against those teams. So I think
they only played one Power 4 school.
Wasn't it 2 or 3? I thought it was.
No, because they played the teams that are in the husk of the Pac-12. There were two. I think there were legitimately 2 teams in the Pac-12 this year and last year, and it has to be dissolved legally. They were allowed to keep it around for 1 year.
It was the legal entity last year, but with the Beavs and the Cougs.
And yes, correct. You follow college football, and so but these teams had mass exodus of players. They're not legitimate programs. Stanford was the one team that I believe he played that's a legitimate school, not good but legitimate.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, not even close to good. Stanford.
Nope.
And so he reminded me a little bit of our guy, Devon Vele. And I know Devon Vele was not exactly a fantasy monster last year, only 41 catches. He really wasn't involved for most of the early season for whatever reason, because, folks, he ended up leading all pass catchers in EPA per target. I know you don't like it, and I know it just completely annihilates EPA as a legitimate stat, but it's true, okay? So I think Nick Nash can be something in the NFL. Can he be dominant? Can he be Puka? No, he can't. Okay, that's not happening. But I think he's interesting from the perspective of a guy who commands targets at an incredibly high rate.
Denny probably should not have mentioned in his article that Nick Nash has had his driver's license since 2016.
I did. Look, I had to be honest with the folks.
Might have left that part out. But the one thing, listen, that I will say about Nick Nash as a prospect, and one of my offseason hobby horses has been so he's probably going to be a bust. He might not even get drafted.
Yeah.
But in this new era of college football, we do have to get more comfortable with older prospects. And Nick Nash is kind of a weird one because he didn't actually ever transfer. He did switch positions. He was a
legitimate quarterback, not like the backup recruited athlete quarterback. He was a legit quarterback who got starts at quarterback for 3 years. So
yes,
I make fun of him for being old, but I think it's a more legitimate excuse than other players have for being as old as they are.
I appreciate producer Tim throwing this out here. Against Boise State, Nick Nash had 126 yards and a touchdown. Against Stanford, he had 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, how about them apples?
Very curious. But in this new era of college football, you're going to get late breakouts they're going to be late breakouts, but they're going to be breakouts that have never happened under the old system because they would have remained buried on a roster. They wouldn't have been able to transfer 2 or 3 times before finally finding a coach or a program who knows how to use them. I'm not saying Nick Nash is going to be like the avatar of this because he wasn't, again, it was not a transfer. It was a position switch, but we can no longer just reflexively, I feel like, write off like late breakouts where it could have been someone who was talented all along that under the old system would have never found the right situation, but under the new system did find the right situation.
I have a bone to pick. Whenever Denny likes a prospect, he's like, high A-dot. Love seeing high A-dot. The moment that guy gets to the NFL and has a high A-dot, he's like, where are all my checkdowns? I thought I ordered a bunch of checkdowns, and you put 2 28-dot targets in the bag. I want to return this. And I think for Nash, it's a little more concerning because these super high A-dot slot guys, I think you said 13.3 A-dot in his final season. When they're doing a lot out of the slot, creates like a lot of ambiguity on how they're getting that work. So a lot of it's like, oh, you're in the slot, you're not facing press, you blow by some linebacker and catch a 15-yard pass downfield, and that stuff doesn't translate really well to the NFL. It was like a big red flag for Jalen Hyatt and Tutu Atwell. Other players have succeeded with this. Like Malik Neighbors can win out of the slot deep in the NFL because he's just that good. So it's not the biggest red flag, but I do think being a deep slot receiver who then goes out and runs a 4.57 is a big concern for him.
We, at the very least, we're going to get a ton of preseason production from Nick Nash, and that's important.
That we are.
Wish you had said at least 4.47 instead of 4.57.
That's pretty ugly. I'll be honest.
Denny, who is the second underrated wide receiver prospect you want to talk about?
Ricky White out of UNLV. So he sat behind both Jalen Naylor and Jaden Reed, both of whom we've mentioned on the show for some reason. At Michigan State before he transferred to UNLV. He's not super old like Nick Nash. He turned 23 in February, so he has that going for him.
They're pretty old as far as these things go, but yeah.
I mean, no, he's not 25. He hasn't had his driver's license for 10 years.
For being a non-prospect, he's young.
Right.
That's what we're saying, yeah.
He'll get to the CFL by 28. We can say that much about him.
First or UFL. First UNLV receiver to post ever to post back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. He ranked second in yards per route run from the slot last year, trailing only T-Mac McMillan. And so he, versatile, mostly slot guy, kind of undersized, but it's just crazy productive and targeted on a very high rate of his pass routes that I can't find in my article right now.
And listen, he dominated Syracuse.
He did, as producer Tim says, 10 catches, 135 yards and a touchdown against the.
I've got a note. No way he didn't block a punt against Syracuse. He led the nation among teams. If he himself was a football team, he led the nation in blocked punts. I believe he also returned one of his only 4 punt returns for a touchdown. Like, wow. I mean, look, I'm a sucker for like a guy who just does the little stuff well, even if it's not related to fantasy. Like, I just think it's cool that he blocks punts. But
we also like it with these kind of guys because it earns them coaching staff trust they might not otherwise get, and it earns them opportunities on the field they might not otherwise get. Where if you're a guy like Ricky White, doing that small stuff could end up actually being your ticket to getting a chance to do the bigger stuff.
So, Player Profiler, which is a site I frequent this time of year,
really good site, Mr. Matthew Kelly.
Yeah, check it out for sure. This caught my attention, folks. So Ricky White's college dominator rating, 50.1%. That's the 96th percentile. Like, it almost doesn't get better than that. Just total domination. Like, I know it's UNLV. I get it. They're not playing, great teams. But
they've also kind of become a factory team, though, Denny, where like they're getting some like real athletes coming in and out of the UNLV program. They have bigger aspirations. They're not San Jose State UNLV.
No, they're not. No, they're not. But I don't think you can knock a guy like Ricky White for dominating at UNLV and not dominating at like Florida or whatever, because that's where he is. And he did what he had to do, I think, to earn himself some, like, at least a little bit of respect, a little bit of notice come in, with the draft coming up.
Dominate the totally fake competition you have and not the totally fake competition you don't have.
That's right.
That's what we should say to Ricky White. We're running a little bit out of time, but we're going to get Kyle anyway on his 2 underrated running backs coming out of his Dynasty rankings articles. We let Denny do underrated wide receivers because Denny loves the spreadsheet so much. Kyle, who are 2 underrated running backs you really like heading in to the NFL draft next week?
I'll be quick about it. DJ Giddens, 6 foot, 212, back-to-back 200 carry seasons. Had in his past 2 years, both of the years as a starter, caught 50 passes or nearly 600 yards, and then goes out and crushes the combine. with I think like a 95th, 97th percentile RAS.
He was invited to the combine, thank God.
Yeah.
Were Denny's guys invited to the combine?
Yeah, I think they're all combine guys. They all bombed the combine, strangely. I actually don't think Torrey Horton did, who was in the article. And I like Torrey Horton.
No, he did okay. Yeah.
He did. I think he did well, frankly. The other two did not. DJ Giddens goes out. He's big. He catches passes. He crushes the combine. 2 years ago, he was an elite tackle breaker. Last year, wasn't as good at breaking tackles, but was extremely explosive, having extremely good long run metrics. Don't know if he can maybe put it all together in a season, but the guys who can put it all together have size, catch passes, and dominate their backfield. He did that. That's for a guy who's probably like a second-round rookie pick in dynasty leagues, like on that 2-3 turn. That's all you can ask for. He has the potential to be a 3-down guy in the NFL. And he was good in college too. Other one, not as big of like, he can do it all. He's 212 pounds or whatever. But man, the combine of Bhayshul, Tuten, Virginia Tech running back, he runs a 4.32 at over 200 pounds. He's basically, I mean, this is just in, the underwear Olympics. He is basically as fast as, he literally is as fast as Devon Achane at like 20 pounds heavier. And he had the #1 backfield dominator rating while at Virginia Tech last year, meaning he was both dominant in terms of getting all of the work and outproducing his backups. Not elite production in terms of like Genty level production, but it's sort of like Denny said in terms of the competition you face. You can only give, or at least you have to give Tuten a lot of credit for completely outproducing the guys in his backfield, even if it didn't mean he got to 1,500, 1,800 rushing yards. He was so much better than everyone else at a Power 4 conference. He's an elite athlete. He can catch passes and return kicks. Like another guy where he's maybe not quite as big. He's only 5'9", I believe 204, 206, but enough size, can catch passes, and just has elite breakaway speed, which is both on the tape, in the data, and then he shows up and tests that way. Like, that's the fun kind of bet I want to make in Dynasty. And frankly, it's a fun kind of bet I'd want my NFL team to make too. Like the guy who maybe never gets to another guy, doesn't maybe get 20 touches a game, but he can get a home run every few weeks. Like, that is the type of guy I want to see touches on my NFL team. Give me that. It's give me Jaylen Warren over Najee Harris. And he's that type of dynamic back.
Well, that archetype of player you just described too, usually like, listen, I know he's 5'7". So even 5'9" will take. 5'9" is absolutely giant for this kind of
right. No, I'm in at 5'9". Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. And Denny, you have any final thoughts on Kyle's underrated running backs? Are these sickos on your radar yet?
Not particularly, but I do appreciate you guys letting me talk about these disgusting wide receiver prospects, and hopefully something will come of them.
I'm always such a sucker for college production. So Nick Nash, now I'm like,
me too.
In the back of my head, and like my dynasty drafts, like, 4th round. Come on, Nick. Sure,
you never know.
You could just light this pick on fire, but instead I'm going to take Nick Nash.
I do think it matters. Like a guy like that has to land in the right spot. You know what I mean? Like somewhere where there's no competition. And so we're hoping for the Giants.
Remember last year when we were excited about Malik Washington?
That's not over.
It's so over. Come on, grow up.
It's not over. I hope it's not over, but the draft can be a very humbling experience. So we hope we're getting you ready for it, though. Getting Kyle dynasty rankings up on all 4 of the key skill player positions. Denny with his 3 underrated wide receiver prospects. Anything else coming over the next 7 days for you guys? I must admit, Kyle, Eric Froton, and I hosting a live chat Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern on Rotoworld.com.
Oh, cool.
You guys have any articles coming, Denny?
Yes. Lawrence Jackson and I are going to break down next week after the draft. We're going to break down the veterans who won and lost.
And we're going to have a recap every single night of the draft. Kyle's going to have draft grades with Eric Froton. We're going to have a lot of stuff. We have Mr. Giddens next Tuesday. We're covering the draft from every single angle. So for Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak, I am Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back with you on Tuesday.